Good morning, everybody, and happy Monday. Welcome in to Coffee Break. A lot of us, actually all of us, are on location right now. DMAC and I are at the Sean Payton presser. James Merrilat is in Arizona getting ready for the Super Bowl. That's exciting. So a lot of fun stuff. We hope you all had a wonderful weekend. But you guys, we learned a lot this weekend also. Obviously, Sean Payton's the next Broncos head coach, officially signed on the dotted line. We're ready for it. But Evero is no longer going to be the defensive coordinator. He is going to the Carolina Panthers. When you both saw that Evero was going to the Panthers, what was your first reaction, James Merrilat?
I was kind of relieved. Look, he did a nice job last year, and if the Broncos would have decided to keep him, okay, I could have bought into it. But I've been saying all along, they need to just broom everybody that was part of the debacle that was 2022, right? Just get rid of that stink completely, even though most of it wasn't Evero's fault. I think you just got to get rid of everybody that was a part of it. And the other piece is we've seen over and over and over again, it doesn't work if you force the new head coach to keep certain assistants and have certain people as their coordinators. Let Sean Payton go pick his own guys. Let him interview people all around the league and see who he wants to bring in here. I thought it was a good thing. I was a little bit relieved. I think it's going to be better for the Broncos and for Evero.
If James is going to look cool, I'm going to try to look cool. I'm not going to. I know that looks stupid, actually. Yeah, listen, first of all, how about guerrilla broadcasting coffee break here? From two different cars and James at the Super Bowl, and and I sit out here and I'm in the parking lot. I know it's kind of tricky to tell. Let me adjust things just a little bit so you can kind of see. Wait, hold on. I don't know. There you go. Right, got it. See, I'm here. Rachel is here. I gotta set this back down. So Evero needs to go. He was a loyal friend. He's a great defensive coordinator, and he just needed to go, guys. That's it. No hard feelings. I think we're all a little surprised it wasn't Minnesota, but so what? I don't think it's really that big of a deal. I've been doing some digging into the Sean Desai guy, who I think is going to take the job. I mean, he turned down the opportunity in Minnesota. What a fascinating dude. He's the first person of Indian descent who has a degree from Boston University, a master's at Columbia, and a doctorate from Temple. So he's Dr. Desai. And he seems like a really smart, bright guy who we talked about, hey, the Fangio defense is all right. And if Fangio came back here, it'd be okay. Well, he studied under Fangio. He got blown out in Chicago because they just blew everybody out, kind of like what happened to Evero. And then spent a year, ironically, up in Seattle. So I'm sure he heard a bunch of crap talk about Russell Wilson up there. Listen, man, I'm all right with that. Looks like a smart guy, that's for sure. And we'll just see how it goes. Now, I don't know that's official, but it certainly seems to be the leader in the clubhouse.
All right, DMAC, while we have you, we're going to have you refresh like you're getting a phone call, because I want to make sure your audio is good. Your audio switched for a little bit. That's what happens when you're on location. You never know what's going to happen. So we're going to have him refresh. James and I are going to continue. Were you just shocked, though, when it came down to the Carolina Panthers? Because I wasn't expecting that at all. I was just assuming if he was going to leave, it was going to be straight to the Vikings and a conversation.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. And it was part of what I wrote about today at denversports.com of, the Russell Wilson has been chucked under the bus by Nathaniel Hackett and to some extent, Evero, right? Like when Nathaniel Hackett's able to get a offensive coordinator job that quickly after overseeing an offense that was arguably the worst in the history of this organization, the only way he could do it is by pointing the finger of blame at Russell Wilson. Like it was all Russell's fault, because otherwise, why on earth would you bring him in? And Evero is sending the message by going to Carolina to work for Frank Reich instead of staying here and building upon what he already had and a good defense and working for Sean Payton. He'd rather go to Carolina and go to that mess. That's saying, hey, I don't want any part of Russell Wilson, and I've already seen that disaster for a year. So it should provide the motivation for Russell Wilson. Hey, two guys that were here last year have chucked you under the bus, and as I put in my column, that's your eye of the tiger moment. If that doesn't get you fired up and refocused, like Rocky Balboa when Apollo Creed takes him to L.A. to train in Rocky 3, then nothing's going to.
Is it more about I want to just know your guys' basic opinion. I don't know if you guys have any inside information, but do you feel like it was really because Evero and management didn't get along and there were some things that, were discussed or whatever behind the scenes, and less about Nathaniel Hackett being his friend? Because it's an opportunity to move up, and he obviously chose not to do that when it came down to interim head coach. But it just seems very strange. Like, it was more than just, hey, I got a really good buddy and this happened to him. Like, it seems like there's something more to the story that we don't know about, D-Mac.
Well, there certainly were so many advantages for him staying in terms of how the Broncos viewed it, because if he, and I think that's just a matter of time until he becomes a head coach, if he were to become a head coach, the Broncos would get 2 third-round picks in successive years. So loads of motivation for the Broncos to want to keep him. I think Evero wanted to be out of here. I mean, listen, I don't think Sean Payton has a big relationship with Sean Desai. So what's the difference? He wanted to be gone, man. He didn't take the interim job. He's willing to move his family a couple times in just a couple of years. He wanted out of here. I think that's pretty clear.
I think this is a fun game of what voice will D-Mac have each time he comes back. Because now he's Helium D-Mac, which
refresh.
Yeah, he's going to go back and he's going to be like a baritone. This deep voice.
I was just going to let him go to the presser. I was like, James and I, we could easily take that.
Oh, my goodness. That was funny.
Helium. That's a good
yeah, exactly. Helium D-Mac. What does he got now?
How do I sound now?
Is your car on, D-Mac?
My car. Oh, okay. I'll turn my car off. Does that make a difference?
I'm sure it's probably connecting to your.
Well, no. I turned the Bluetooth off.
You do sound like you're on helium. I don't know if I can
take
you seriously on such an intense day.
I still sound like helium now?
Yes.
D-Mac, this is the signs that you got to go make sure our seats are saved. And you see
am I getting blown out because I sound like I'm on helium?
See ya. Go make sure our seats are good. Thank you so much.
Wait. Where is Rachel? Because I could just come into Rachel's car.
I'm probably like 10 cars down from you.
Never mind. I'm gonna go get my seat. I'll talk to you guys later. Read my column at denversports.com. Bye.
All right, there goes D-Mac. Oh my gosh, that was way too funny.
D-Mac's column is really, really good. It went up this morning, and it was it's based on the 2 guys, I'm gonna blank on their names, who bought the soccer team in Wales.
Oh, yeah.
And realized, oh my gosh, we just got to throw money at this thing and fix the stadium and buy new players and buy a new coach. And that's essentially what Greg Penner is doing here. It's like Rob McElhaney. And who's the guy from Deadpool? Why am I blanking on his name? Ryan Reynolds. Yes. So it's about Wexham, I believe is the name of the team. So it's good column, really good column. It's typical D-Mac, right? It's kind of off at a different angle, but it all comes back around. You're like, that's a good point. So check that one out.
And that's why we love him, because you never know where he's going to go with it. Oh, do we have anything else rolling out? I know Cecil wrote something at Denver Sports too, talking about how Sean Payton's really just going to be here to change the culture.
Yeah, it was part of his Mile High Monday. The first portion of it is that Sean Payton will be a culture changer. And, I wish D-Mac was here for this, because he and I, you were on the show too, Rachel, last Thursday. We spent 4 hours talking about Greg Penner being off playing golf, right? And you and Will were like, no big deal. You were not as no big deal as Will, but you were in that camp.
I didn't lose any respect for him, because I was like pretty certain that everything was said and done. But I would have gained a lot more respect if he said, no, I need to get this done.
Right. And D-Mac and I thought we were both pretty clear of like, look, I think it's a very small percentage chance that this thing falls through. It wasn't that. It was the missed opportunity of setting a new culture, right? So getting into Sean Payton setting a new culture, I think the new owner could do that too, where this is an organization that has seemed to put fun ahead of work far too often, whether it was under Nathaniel Hackett or Vic Fangio or VJ. And I thought it would have been a really good opportunity for them to say, hey, look, they would have leaked it out there, quote unquote, that Greg Penner was supposed to play in the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and instead he's here making sure this is done. That would have sent a great message. It would have sent a great tone. At the end of the day, does it matter? No. But it also doesn't matter if you do field day. It doesn't matter if you take the bye week off. It doesn't. But when you add all of them up, all of a sudden it does matter. And I think this would have been a good opportunity to send a message. End of the day, it didn't happen. Here we are today. It's a great day in Broncos country. It really is. Sean Payton is the biggest hire since they brought in Mike Shanahan in 1995. So that's a long time ago. That's 28 years ago. This is a huge day in Broncos country.
we're going to hear, I'm so excited to be part of such a great culture here in Broncos country. I'm the history of all the championships and yada, yada, yada. What else are you expecting to check off your bingo card here?
Well, there will be Russell Wilson questions, and I think he'll, has a lot of respect for Russ, competed against him, had a chance to work with him at the 2018 Pro Bowl.
Will Russ be here?
Great question.
I say yes.
I'm going to go with yes. I think yes. I think he'd be conspicuous in his absence. Mm-hmm. So I don't think he'll be front and center, but will he be one of the players that's hanging out in the back? Yeah. I mean, I would expect it to be Russ and Justin Simmons. Some of the captains, some of the key guys. Pat Surtain was in Vegas for the Pro Bowl, so I don't know if he'll be back because that was all just yesterday. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think Russ will be there. What I want to hear from Sean Payton, though, is two things, and I mentioned it with Schlereth and Evans this morning. I don't want it to be a night at the Friars Club where it's joke central like it was with Nathaniel Hackett. So I think we'll get that, and instead I want to hear a little bit of, man, I would run through a wall for that guy, right? Like, give me a little fire and brimstone, pump me up a little bit as a fan. But the other part is the only question I have now at this point. And look, I was a Jim Harbaugh guy because I didn't want to give up draft picks. And I was a DeMeco Ryans guy because I think he's going to be a star. But Sean Payton clearly was one of, if not the best candidates out there. It was giving up the draft capital that I didn't like. But I'm also a little worried about, like, well, did he just get bored? Does he really want to do this? Does he have that fire and drive that he had, when he was 46 and just on the job in New Orleans and trying to prove to everybody he could do it? Like, it'll be interesting. It's not really specific words, Rachel, that you want to hear. You kind of just get the impression that, yeah, he is in this. That, to me, is the key takeaway we have to have today. But, yeah, he's signed up and he's ready to go to work. This isn't just something because he got bored.
I was listening to the Players Club, and they were talking about one of the things how they love about Sean Payton, and he's so cool and collected. Nathaniel Hackett was so excited, and everything was such a great day, but it seems like Sean Payton's very level-headed and cool and collected. When you talk about your head coach, which one do you want? But let's take Nathaniel Hackett's history aside. We know obviously it didn't work out, but do you want somebody that's so excited for every single opportunity every single day, or do you want somebody that keeps it very level-headed and says, hey, we have a job here to do?
I would lean toward B, level-headed, but I don't want someone who's just flatline.
You don't want a Vic Fangio.
No, exactly. I mean, we can all remember the 2 times Vic Fangio got, animated in 3 years. It was when he got mad that the Ravens went over 100 yards rushing at the end of the game in a game that was over, and he pumped his fist one time when they were up 30-0 at Dallas in a game everybody thought they were going to lose. That was it. So I don't want the flatline. I want somebody that gets fired up and gets into it, kind of a Mike Tomlin type. I don't think Mike Tomlin is up and down and peaks and valleys, and I don't think he goes super low. But, man, when he needs to be fired up either to get on someone or to celebrate something, he's got that. Because that, to me, you got to have a little passion for it. And, Vic Fangio and to some extent Nathaniel Hackett fell into this category. They kind of just look like career coaches. Like, this is just another stop, and I'll end up somewhere else. And lo and behold, that's what's happened. I want somebody who's what's happening on that field on that Sunday, they care about it as much as all of us do when we're sitting at home watching it or sitting in the stands watching. Be invested in it. You got to have a little bit of that.
For sure. We did see the comment. This is, when is the press conference? It is supposed to start at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. DMAC's already obviously headed in. I'm going to head in around 10:50, and then Jake and James are going to take you up until it starts. So definitely stay tuned. A shorter coffee break today, but we're going to talk all about it tomorrow too, so don't worry. There's going to be a ton of good stuff, and then Orange and Blue today later on this afternoon. We'll also break down everything you need to know. So another good question is what we're going to learn about George Paton and where he stands with Greg Penner and the Denver Broncos. How do you anticipate Payton's presence to be today?
I think he will be in a better spot, or at least feel like he's in a better spot than he was at the Nathaniel Hackett press conference. I mean, in that one, it was like, woo, he has been neutered, right? That's the term we all used, and, maybe that's not the proper one, but that's what it felt like. He had kind of been put off to the side, and, Greg Penner's in charge. I think we're going to get, hey, Greg Penner's the boss, and then you got 2 people who are on equal level playing field, right? The general manager and the head coach, and they both report to Greg Penner. Neither one of them reports to each other. I think that's what we're going to get, but it'll be fascinating to see.
And I talked about this on Friday on the drive with DMAC, Will, and Jake, of how I think and DMAC also agreed, of George Payton is back in good terms. It seems like, otherwise I don't think Greg Penner would have been golfing. I think he trusted George Payton. That relationship has continued to build. There's some trust building there again. And now they're like, hey, I'm going to trust you to do your job and make sure this head coach is getting on the right path.
No, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, I think that is a takeaway from, hey, the deal was done. We come to find out Sean Payton was in town, and I'm sure Greg Penner had the handshake and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, he trusted George Payton to and Richard Hurtado and all those people, Darren Muji, to get the deal done. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a fair takeaway. It also was at the 1 yard line, right? So it's like, okay, now you guys punch it in. I don't think it was, just crossed the 50 and he got on his bird and went to the golf tournament and just hoped it all got done. So I think he knew that it was basically done and in good enough hands.
Looking back, do you think that all of this buzz of how the Broncos are going up in the Super Bowl rankings and all this stuff is because still the Broncos have Russell Wilson?
Yeah, I think they have a, proven head coach and they have a proven quarterback. Mm-hmm. And I think people are looking at it and saying, we're fixing to find out. Was it a Russell Wilson problem or was it a Nathaniel Hackett problem?
True.
There will be no question about it at the end of the 2023 season unless Russ gets hurt in the opener or something like that, right? Like if he plays and he's bad with Sean Payton, then he's unfixable. It just can't be done. If he gets back to being Russ, then everybody's going to know it was a Nathaniel Hackett issue. So I think people are betting on that. They're betting on track records of, a Super Bowl winning head coach, a Super Bowl quarterback, and two guys, though, that it's been a long time since either one of them hoisted that Lombardi trophy. So hopefully they're both motivated and have the eye of the tiger moment.
I'm still just super intrigued to see what the offense is going to look like. Like, really, what's Sean Payton's game plan going in to be like, all right, Russ, this is what we're going to have you do. This is how the running game's going to look. Are they going to – they have to upgrade at O-line, you would think, or you would hope so, free agency, or maybe you get a third-round pick. Like, I'm just really curious to see this season what the offense will look like. What do you think? What would you – like, dream scenario right now, what would you love to see happen? How would you like to see him run it?
Honestly, a lot of what we saw in the last two games of the year, right, where it's you have a running game, you stick with it. Latavius Murray wasn't, dazzling in those games, but he was solid. They weren't constantly behind the sticks and in third and long. Russ moving around a little bit, right? They ran the read option in Kansas City where he kept it and ran for like a 20-yard touchdown. They moved him outside and he had the big throw down the field to Jerry Jeudy in the finale. Like Russ looked like the athletic guy who could make plays. Mm-hmm. And I think if you've got him in 3rd and 4, well, here's another. How about this? How about less third downs entirely? Like you can get a first down on first down or second down. Like there's a novel concept, Crazy. But just not constantly being in 3rd and long, good down and distance, sticking to the run game, and then building upon things. Like that was the biggest problem with the Hackett out and Kubiak offense is nothing built upon what had worked in previous games, in the previous quarter. It was just a random hodgepodge of plays like you were pulling them out of a hat as opposed to setting things up. And, kind of by the 4th quarter, the run play that didn't work as well in the 1st quarter, all of a sudden now is breaking through when people get tired. Mm-hmm. Or it's, hey, we got to keep running this. And I know it's not going to be big yardage, but off of this, it's going to set up, the tight end down the seam, and we're going to get a big play on that. Just sort of the third dimension of it instead of just it all being flat and linear and not having any flow. That's what I'm looking for. It's the difference between an offense and a playbook. They're different things. They're different things.
Very. Stink just said to Cecil in the presser, I should sit in the front row and heckle him. There's a lot of conversation about Mark Schlereth becoming the coach of the O-line. There's some people who say, oh, it would be really cool, but I don't see it happening. And Stink even tweeted out this morning, some news outlet had written that he had already talked to Sean Payton about becoming the coach of the O-line for the Denver Broncos, and he wanted to clarify that was not true. He had talked to them at Fox. This was way before any of this happened. Do you think Mark Schlereth will be a Broncos O-line head or coach at any point? It's such an awkward conversation because it's like he's our coworker and you want the best for him, but like I think that there are other people.
I don't think he will be, but if he gets the job, he will be great at it. Mark is one of those guys who's good at everything he does, right? Everything he touches turns to gold. He's a hard worker, and he played for Joe Bugle and Alex Gibbs, two of the best offensive line coaches in the history of this league. Yep. So I think he'll be really good at it. Now, he's inexperienced at that. So, that works against him if you're comparing him to Mike Munchak. But Mike Munchak had to get a first job at some point too, right? So I think that if Mark decides to go down that path, there's no better opportunity than right now. And I think he'll be fantastic at it.
All right, I'm going to peace out. Jake Shapiro is going to hop in. Follow me on Twitter at HeyRachelVhill, as you're going to watch me run all the way to UCL Trading Center to make it in time for this. It's very windy. So everybody, thank you so much for hanging with me here on Coffee Break. Jake and James are going to take it from here. And Sean Payton's the next head coach of the Denver Broncos. Let's go, everybody. Jake, take it away.
Yeah, James, you're in Arizona getting ready for the big game. The Broncos were far away from the big game this season. What do you think is a successful first season for Sean Payton in Denver? Is it a win-loss thing, or is it just simply getting Russ back on track, or is it a combination of maybe both things?
I think it's a combination of both things. I do think priority one in 2023 is getting Russell Wilson back on track, because that will set up everything else to fall from there, right? If he gets him back on track, well, then they're going to win more games than they lose. So I think it'll take care of itself. And it sets them up to be able to know, okay, what are we doing in 2024 and beyond? So you have to answer that question first and find out, hey, is he fixable? I think he is. And then B, do they like to work together? And, do they have a good rapport, and, their skill sets and all that seem to match? I think if they find that out and it's a yes, I think 10 wins, being a playoff contender, I think when you're in the last couple of weeks of the year, the Broncos need to be in the hunt or under the wild card or on that graphic, and not that, 6-9 team that needs 47 things to go their way to get in, but like legitimately in the graphic, control their own destiny late in the season, or maybe need one thing to break their way and they can get in. That's what I'm looking for. I think that would be a huge step in the right direction. It's not playoffs or bust, but it's pretty close.
If they had hired D'Amico Ryans, to me, it seemed like it was going to be more of a rebuilding team, maybe take a couple of years to get up to speed, but you had a young star coach and some good new ideas. Is Sean Payton an indicator to you that they're pretty much in win now mode?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think you're paying a quarterback that kind of money, and you're not paying a head coach that kind of money to rebuild. You could do that, and they can't get out of the Russell Wilson contract, but in theory, you would do that. You would do what they're doing in Houston. They don't have a lot of money tied up in a quarterback. They're probably going to draft one. They don't have $16 million a year, $18 million a year, whatever it turns out, tied up in D'Amico Ryans. Not that he's working for nothing down there, but he's also not the highest paid coach in the league or among the highest paid coaches. That's more how you rebuild, because you're not spending huge amount of money to have what are going to be a couple of losing seasons here as you build it up. You spend that kind of dough on a quarterback and a coach, you're expecting to be competitive right now. You're expected to be in the hunt, in the playoffs, in the chase, playing on, the big stage, national TV games. Texans aren't going to be on any national TV games, and they don't want to be. They got to get things fixed, and they don't want the bright lights of that. Broncos should be. They've made themselves, at least based on this hire, in the conversation of marquee teams.
What's goal number one for Sean Payton, the first step of the agenda the next few weeks here?
Well, I think you want to assemble a staff, and I think you want to assemble an all-star staff, right? It doesn't have to mean it's all big names and all people we know, but it's got to be, hey, these are a bunch of great coaches and not just people you've worked with before and buddies and the things that derailed Nathaniel Hackett. I think that's number one. And then I think you just start establishing, that we're going to hear this word a ton today, Jake, but I do think it's the key, that you got to start establishing the culture. And that is, it's not a big grandiose speech. It's not, painting words of inspiration on the walls. It's just sort of leading by example, right? Of first one in, last one out, constantly working on it, constantly thinking football, constantly work, and putting that first, and just, start to establish that mindset of, hey, we're going to have some fun, but that's going to come when we win, and winning is going to come as a result of working. I think just establishing that culture is huge, because it just disappeared. It's disappeared over the last 6-7 years, but it really disappeared this past year.
Are you not of the belief that a big part of this roster needs to turn over? Because I look at this roster and I think, yeah, they had some problems last year, but a lot of the problems they had last year going into this offseason are only going to get worse. Like, they don't have a solution at edge rusher that's just right there. Their offensive line isn't just going to magically get better. Their running back room still has a lot of questions. And I think the one area of power might be their wide receiver group. And it seems very, it would seem simple to maybe deal a Cortland Sutton for either draft assets or get out of the contract and be able to go sign a free agent. Like, it seems like they still have a ton of questions about their roster going forward.
Yeah, and it's a tricky one to evaluate because, look, I don't want to use injuries as an excuse at all. But there were a lot of games that offensively, Russell Wilson was out there playing with Brandon Johnson and Kendall Hinton and Jalen Virgil and Greg Dulcich and Latavius Murray, right? A bunch of guys who nobody thought were going to play significant minutes other than maybe Dulcich at the beginning of the season. None of them were on the field for the opener. And I think if I'm Sean Payton and I want to evaluate this roster, I would go put in that Seattle tape. Right. And the offense, I know they only scored 16 points, but they moved up and down the field. They Javonte and Melvin Gordon combined for more than 100 yards. Russ threw for 340. The offensive line was pretty much intact there. They didn't have Billy Turner, so right tackle was a revolving door. But from left to right, you still had Bolsey, you still had Reisner, you had Cushenberry, and you had Quinn Miners. And until Quinn Miners got hurt in that game, they played pretty well. So I think that's the best one to evaluate everything as a whole. The only guy that was really missing that game was Tim Patrick. And you don't know what he's going to be when he comes back. You don't know what Javonte Williams is going to be when he comes back. So I think you got to go find yourself some insurance for those two positions. I think you got to either sign a free agent or draft in with that third-round pick, a running back or receiver, bring somebody in here that you think can contribute right away. And then you got some decisions to make. Reisner, I already mentioned. Do you bring him back at left guard? I would say yes. I don't know that there's a better left guard on the market. So better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. And then the other one is Draymond Jones. You got to get that solidified so this defense doesn't take a step backward. Because if you're without Draymond Jones and Bradley Chubb, two players who were keys in that opener, then I think you're going to be in trouble because they gave up 17 points in the first half to Geno Smith and company and blanked them in the second half. They were great once they kind of got their feet wet. And, it was the first time they played because of the preseason plan. So, and Bradley Chubb had a huge sack to get the ball back that set up the drive that ended in the 64-yard attempt. So you got to figure out, hey, what do you do to replace Bradley Chubb? Is it Baron Browning? Is it a free agent? What do you do? And then you got to get Draymond Jones signed, sealed, and delivered.
What's the temperature there, James?
It's like 70, but it feels like it's 105.
Okay, so when it's 105 and sunny here home in Denver, will George Payton be the general manager of the Broncos?
I think so. I think the fact that he's been, and we don't know how involved, but it seems like he's been fairly heavily involved in all of this. It seems like he and Sean Payton have a good relationship. We'll get some verbal cues and maybe, body language cues today. But I think he will be because we haven't heard a peep about here's who Sean Payton wants to be his personnel guy. So if we don't know that, then I don't know why it wouldn't be George Payton.
DMAC made a great point while I was on the drive on Friday about, Sean Payton's rivalries with the Minnesota Vikings. Guess who was the assistant GM at that point? It was George Payton. So they've had their clashes throughout the years, I think. So it'll be interesting to see if they do work together. But as people kind of start tuning off and tailing off to head towards the Denver Broncos press conference for Sean Payton, which you can catch just at about any local news channel, I did want to grab you for a second to talk about the best team in the NBA right now by record, or I guess a half game back because they lost last night. And you were very upset about that as the Nuggets rested their guys. But where do you feel overall about where the Nuggets are right now? Do you think they're in a good spot? Do you think they're in a great spot? Do you think they need to do something this week ahead of the deadline on Thursday?
No, I think they're in a great spot. I think there are only three things that can keep this team from reaching the NBA Finals for the first time in franchise history. First one, knock on wood, is injuries, right? We've seen that the last 2 years. That derails your run. The second one is if the Warriors ever get completely healthy and completely right, they're going to be scary. And then it's Michael Malone. I just want to see him do it in the playoffs. I haven't. Outside of the bubble, I haven't seen him, be a great playoff coach, be the Phil Jackson type who works the officials in the post-game presser. Just those kind of things. They've just unraveled against the Suns 2 years ago. And then to a lesser extent, but still kind of did last year against the Warriors. There were no adjustments, not trying anything outside the box. It was just, hey, blame it on the injuries. Oh, woe is us. So I think they're in a great spot. I hate the new way of the NBA, and I tweeted this out, and it was late in his career. Michael Jordan played all 82 games in the season in which the Bulls went 72-10 and won the championship, and he played 17 back-to-backs, 9 of which were on the road. So if he could do it, 30 years ago, I don't know why guys can't do it now when they're flying charter, staying at the Ritz-Carlton, have a masseuse, have 19 trainers, have all the, nutritionists and all the rest of this stuff. I think it's hogwash. If they used to play 60 games 10 years ago, and now they're trying to make him play 82. I could see the griping about the schedule and griping about the travel and griping about all that, but it's nothing new. And these guys have it easier than any other player in the history of the game. Show up and do your job.
Jokic didn't actually fly private or stay at the Ritz-Carlton because he wasn't on that flight last night to Minnesota. And I actually love it. I'm on the complete opposite side of you. I think they earned that. It'd be a different case scenario if they were in the Warriors spot and the Warriors came into Denver last week and they tried to play through what would have been a scheduled loss. And it was ugly. And Steph hurt his leg. And then Steph re-injured that leg this weekend, and he might be out until the start of the postseason. So I think the Nuggets.
People get hurt all the time. People get hurt all the time.
But every single time you don't play those guys, it lessens the chance to get hurt. So I think the Nuggets are in a great spot right now, and I don't think they should mess with it at all. And any opportunity they feel might be a little sketchy, just pull it. That's where I'm at.
It's the Nathaniel Hackett approach. That worked out well. Let's wrap them in bubble wrap and make sure they're ready for December. And they had more injuries than any team in the league. My problem with it is be a competitor, right? Like, be a competitor. You want to go out and kick someone's butt every single time you have, as opposed to, I'm just going to stay home for this one. I'm just going to sit behind the bench in a suit and watch my teammates lose. I couldn't do that. I think they just got to have that's worrisome to me coming into the postseason because, man, you got to have that dog in you. You got to be a competitor. And that doesn't tell me they have it, but we'll find out. We'll find out.
It's worked out great for Steve Kerr, but that's a different scenario. But we are going to head towards viewing the Sean Payton introductory press conference. We will be back maybe with a little new look tomorrow on Coffee Break. You will hear from Rachel Veal, DMAC, and all of your favorite people here on Coffee Break. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you tomorrow.